and Assalamualaikum to first and foremost my lecturer, Dr. Fariha, and anyone else who will be watching. My name is FARISYA binti BAKAR SIDDIK, and today I'll be presenting about an e-portfolio in regards to my course subject, which is the English Language Teaching Methodology with the course code BIP3173. In this e-portfolio, we will study the secondary English language curriculum as well as the essential concepts in English language as a second language education. We will analyze the role of the framework in shaping the English instructions in Malaysia's secondary schools, emphasizing alignment with global standards like the CFR to ensure structured and effective language learning. In this program, we will also discuss the vital ESL principles or ESL key concepts such as motivation, language learning strategies and styles, and as well as ESL teaching approaches and 35 Kagan corporate strategies. This framework outlines the English language content and learning standards alongside pedagogical approaches that align with the CFR. It uses CFR levels and descriptions as the principles in constructing the curriculum standards for preschool, primary, as well as secondary education. In the same document, they also provide a syllabus with essential components, which is the themes, topics, content and learning standards, cross-curricular elements, differentiation strategies, as well as assessment standards. It also provides a guide for developing SBLC's target proficiency levels. It emphasizes the methods secondary schools design and implement their school-based English language curriculum. Schools ensure curriculum coherence by integrating both compulsory and elective parts and aligning learning, teaching, and assessment. As you can see from the pictures below, here is one of the examples of the SBLC, which is, in this case, is for Form 2. And as you can see here, as I mentioned, they provided the lesson organization, the key components, as well as the performance level and its description, according to CFR levels. The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which is also known as CFR. This framework is a standardized system and used to measure and describe language proficiency across different languages. It was developed by the Council of Europe to provide a common basis for language learning, teaching and assessment across Europe as well as other countries, which in this case includes Malaysia. The CFR provides clear descriptions of learners' capability at different stages, as you can see here in the picture, of language acquisition, which varies from beginner to advanced levels. It is widely used for education institutions, schools, and establishments to define language proficiency, develop curriculum, and assess students' language skills. As you can see from this picture, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, CFR, encompasses the SBLC itself, which also shows, as I mentioned before, that SBLC depends or is formatted according to the CFR. For ESL key concept, we'll be focusing on four of the concepts, which in this case is the motivation, learner strategies and styles, ESL teaching approaches, as well as, and lastly, the 35 Kagan corporate strategies. For motivation, there are actually two types of learning motivations. First, there is the integrative motivation, which is when learning the language in order to take part in the culture, which is mostly related to personal values and internalized goals of the student themselves. Meanwhile, instrumental is when students learn the language with purpose, such as for career goals or other practical reasons, and it is mostly related to external expectations and practicality. Next, the motivation in an ESL classroom, methods and practices, which is creating the basic motivational conditions, generating initial motivation, maintaining and protecting motivation, and encouraging positive retrospective self-evaluation. Meanwhile, the objectives are the sustaining enthusiasm, which lastly is the love for the language, because teachers must cultivate the love for the English language among students as a subject and a language they seldom use. So, how do teachers motivate ESL students? There are three ways. One of them is triggering their interest. It is by engaging students in learning English, connecting the language to their personal interests and emotions. The second one would be integrating fun activities and technologies. This means that games and fun activities offer significant benefits for language learners, such as promoting learner-centeredness, encouraging communication, reducing anxiety, and integrating language skills. And the third way to motivate ESL students would be to encourage language experience outside the classroom. This is by engaging students with English outside the classroom can significantly boost their motivation. For learning styles and strategies, I have divided into three main categories, which is definitions, learning styles, and language learning strategies. We'll be discussing about four definitions, which is firstly styles, which refers to an individual's preference of doing things or interacting with their surroundings, and specifically in learning, it refers to an individual's preferences for acquiring information. For strategies, it is a specific action or method used to complete a task or achieve a goal. And in learning as well, strategies are purposeful techniques students use to enhance their understanding or performance. Meanwhile, for language styles, it is the manner in which an individual expresses themselves through language, which can include formality, tone, register, choice of vocabulary based on the context, audience, and purpose. And lastly, for language learning strategies, it is the techniques and or methods that learners consciously use to enhance the acquisition of a second language. There are two types of learning styles, which is learning styles and cognitive styles. Why are they different? It is because For cognitive style, it is the way we learn and address problems that are linked to one's personality and inclination, which is something that is just deeply ingrained in a person. Meanwhile, for learning styles, it is the cognitive styles that are specifically related to an educational context. Visual learners prefer to see and use visual aids, and they can benefit from color coding or visual cues. For auditory learners prefer to hear the information because they benefit from listening and verbalizing ideas. For reading and writing, it is when learners prefer reading and writing as they benefit from reviewing and rewriting notes in their own words. Means that they would understand whatever they gather, whatever the input they get, and turn it into their own words for their own understanding. And lastly, for kinesthetic, learners prefer hands-on experience and physical activities. They benefit through movement and utilizing all sense. And next are the definitions of cognitive styles, which is in this case field dependency, ambiguity tolerance, and reflective impulsivity. For field dependency, there's actually two, where there's field independent, where learners are able to handle the language parts as well as the whole without being distracted. And field dependent learners need context to focus on and understand something and may take in language one part at a time. Specifically for field dependency, it is the way learners deal with multiple inputs. Next is ambiguity tolerance, which is the way learners process information. High tolerance learners prefer to find and organize key points into a summary and enjoy guessing meanings and predict outcomes. Meanwhile, low tolerance learners prefer to think and analyze and often focus on rules and generalization. And lastly, for reflect impulsivity is the way learners deal with response time. This means that, for example, for impulsive style learners, they will react hastily or rapidly in action or words without thoroughly thinking the situation, while on the other hand, reflective style learners would process the information at a low speed, but with a higher accuracy of the information. Next, we'll be talking about the language learning strategies, which is specifically on strategies-based instructions. And this is divided into two, which is learning strategies and communication strategies. Learning strategies refers to the specific techniques learners take to improve their understanding and proficiency of a language. And these strategies help learners enhance their ability to process, learn, produce a language in a more efficient and effective way. On the other hand, for communication strategies, it refers to the methods used to overcome communication barriers in conversation, especially when the speaker lacks the necessary language resources to fully express their message. This is mostly for beginner L2 learners, and these strategies help learners deliver meaning despite not knowing specific words or phrase, or if they face difficulties in understanding others who speak the L2. For direct strategies, it helps learners to directly engage with the language, while on the other hand, indirect strategies focus more on the overall learning process. For direct strategies, it's more conscious and explicit, and indirect strategies is less conscious and explicit. For direct strategies, learners, it is aimed to directly improve learners' language skills, while for indirect strategies, it often helps learners manage their emotions and motivation and the overall process of learning. And for the communication strategies, it's divided into two, which is the avoidance strategies and compensatory strategies, where avoidance strategies is the avoidance of speaking in the L2, in which they anticipate communication problems. Compensatory strategies, it involves compensation for missing the knowledge, which occurs between usually two advanced L2 learners with a common L1 that they speak. We'll be discussing about the 5 main learning theories, which is the behaviorist theory, innativist, cognitivist, constructivist, and social cultural theory. Behaviorism is a well-known concept that highlights how students learn through interactions with the environment. And according to this theory, all behaviors are acquired through environmental experiences with a limited influence from innate or inherited factors. It highlights that learning is shaped by external stimuli and reinforcement rather than internal inclination or natural instincts. As B.F. Skinner, who is an American psychologist, and proposed that operant conditioning as opposed to classical conditioning by Pavlov. And he also invented the Skinner box by using positive and negative reinforcement to teach certain behavior. Here is a few pictures and a video to further explain classical and operant conditioning. And here is also a further explanation for reinforcements and punishments. And here is a video and a picture to further explain what it means. So how do we implement this theory in the classroom? By using drills, we can use question and answers. There's guided practice, there's reinforcement, as I mentioned before, specifically for positive reinforcements, and there's also immediate feedback. In this theory, whereby it is a theory that suggests that certain knowledge, abilities, or characteristics are innate, which means that they are biologically hardwired into an individual from birth. In the context of language acquisition, innatism specifically refers to the idea that humans have an inherent genetically performed ability to learn the language. The founder of innatism is Noam Chomsky, who is an American professor, who is also the father of modern linguistics and even developed the theory of transformational grammar. He is also the creator of the universal grammar theory and one of the founders of the field of cognitive science. Proposed the language acquisition device, which is a theoretical concept to explain the innate capacity humans have for language acquisitions, particularly for children, and Chomsky believes that humans are born with a natural ability to learn language. This built-in capacity in one's brain helps children quickly learn and correct grammar in their native language, even with limited exposure. There's also a short video on to further understand what it means by LAE. And how do we implement this in the classroom? By using naturalistic language exposure, minimal explicit teaching, and the focus on communication. Next is for cognitism, which focuses on the process of thinking and how it influences learning. It encourages students to think about their thinking in a way. It helps them comprehend and overcome concepts or subjects they find challenging, and this theory enhances students' engagement and motivation because it offers learners a fresh perspective of their own thinking and brain function by promoting self-reflection on themselves and awareness of their cognitive processes. This is John Piaget, who is a Swiss psychologist and the founder of cognitivist theory, and he is best known for his theory of cognitive development that outlines children's thinking, which evolves in stages as they interact with the environment. This is the 4 stages of cognitive development that he has constructed, which he viewed as sequential steps whereby each stage is building upon the previous one. These stages help children gradually develop their understanding of the world around them. And as children progress through these stages, they gain more complex and a more enhanced cognitive ability. Teachers can implement this particular theory in the classroom by asking questions, opportunities to make errors, self-reflection, and thinking aloud. Next is constructivist theory, which is learning that suggests learners actively build their own knowledge with their understanding shaped by personal experiences. It emphasizes that individuals use their prior knowledge as a base to learn new information, and for teachers specifically, understanding this theory is crucial because it helps them to recognize students have different backgrounds, which influences how they learn and how they perceive. And so how do we implement this in the classroom, whereby we can use project-based learning, or as I mentioned before, PBL, there's authentic tasks, and lastly is the active participations. Lastly, for under ESL teacher approaches, which is the social cultural theory, it's a framework for understanding the way social interactions, culture, language influences the cognitive development. And according to this theory, learning is a socially mediated process where individuals acquire knowledge and skills through engagement with more knowledgeable others, such as teachers, peers, adults, as well as through participation in cultural practices. Vygotsky emphasized that the importance of language as a tool for thinking and learning is he introduced key concepts such as zone of proximal development, ZPD, which we'll be explaining more later on, and scaffolding, which highlight the methods of learners to achieve a high level of understanding. So here is Lev Vygotsky, who is a Russian and Soviet psychologist. He is the creator of social cultural theory, and he believes that cognitive development is affected by cultural and social factors. For ZPD, it refers to the gap between what learners can do alone and what they can do with the guidance or collaboration. It is usually at the point where the learner is on the verge of mastering a skill, or in this case, mastering a language, and instructions is most effective at this stage as it helps learners advance from needing assistance to being able to form independently. Meanwhile, for scaffolding, it is similar but not really in a way where it is defined as a process that enables learners to achieve tasks that they are unable to do independently by providing targeted guidance. It involves a series of supporting activities provided by an educator or a more knowledgeable person to help a learner navigate the zone of proximal development. These activities are designed to assist that learners develop their skills and understanding with the goal of gradually removing the support as the learner becomes more competent. So how do we implement this in the classroom? One of them would be by collaborative learning, implementation such for ZPD, and lastly for the implementation would be cultural context. So what is the Kagan strategies? It is developed by Spencer Kagan, who is an Australian psychologist. It is designed to engage students to encourage collaboration and promote active participation. And by structuring learning activities that require students to work together, share ideas, and hold each other accountable of their own understanding. But it also helps to foster a dynamic, interactive classroom environment that enhances both academic and learning and social skill development. Specifically, why cooperative learning? It is because this learning strategy is an instructional approach where students work together in small groups to achieve common academic goals and focuses on collective responsibility rather than individual achievement. This helps students to enhance their social communication skills, which are really vital for both their school and outside of school life. The benefits of Kagan structures has increased student achievement, as can be seen in all the graphs shown. It drops in disciplinary referrals. There's a positive social skill development, and lastly, there's an improved race relations. And lastly is what are the most used or popular cooperative strategies. I will be sharing about 5 today, which is group discussion. It is one of the most basic cooperative learning methods. Next is the 3-step interview. It is similar to a discussion, however, the steps are a bit different, whereby it suggests to work in groups of 4 but can modify for larger groups. And for think, pair, and share, this activity is aimed at increasing student involvement. Guess the flip. It is similar to this game where 2 truths and 1 lie, where they can be played within teams or the entire class. For within teams, the students can try to deceive their teammates, while for within the class, teams try to fool other teams. And lastly is the inside-outside circle. This activity is great for sharing information in pairs. It involves participation standing in 2 concentric circles, as you can see from the picture here. It can be used as a closing activity where participants share 1 highlight and 1 action they will take as an outcome of the lesson. That is the end of my presentation today. I hope it is comprehensible and enjoyable, and thank you for listening until the end. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.